Today, we're going to take a look at 5 different cameras that you can use to create videos, do live streams, and in some cases, shoot photos. Aiming to create video setups that have the flexibility to shoot videos for pre-recorded church announcements or be used for live streaming, all for around $1,000 and in some cases under $700, is the goal of this project. I took 5 cameras, a mix of camcorders and mirrorless cameras, 3 external microphones, and a few tripods to determine what might be the best setup for you. Here is what I discovered. The higher the cost usually results in better quality. Also, the more complicated to use also results in higher quality. Now, this doesn't mean that cheap and easy looks bad. It just doesn't look as good as the competition. Between camcorder and mirrorless cameras, camcorders are easier to operate. They come with every cable that you need right in the box, including an HDMI cable to connect for streaming. And you have the ability to plug the camcorder into the wall for non-stop running power. The con with camcorders? The image quality just isn't as good. How about mirrorless? Well, you definitely get better image quality and colors, and they allow you to be more creative by swapping out lenses and creating a bokeh or background blur. The cons? Well, some of them need to be operated while live streaming in order to keep that focus tack sharp, and you need to buy the HDMI cable to connect to your streaming device, and they all run on rechargeable batteries. Granted, you can buy and charge extra batteries, and some cameras allow for a third-party dummy battery that you can plug into the wall for constant power. But that extra video quality you gain with mirrorless comes at the expense of some of that extra legwork. Now, I'm going to do a quick breakdown of each camera, and I'm going to let you see it in action in a traditional office or maybe what a church setup might look like with regular non-studio lighting. And I'll be recording from an ATEM Mini, so the quality that you see should be very similar to a 1080p live stream. Again, this is not a recording from the camera onto the camera's memory card, which would probably look better, but a computer recording of the HDMI output so that you can see what it would look like for live streaming. I'm going to start with the least expensive and work my way up, and I'll also be using 3 different shotgun style microphones with these cameras, and will indicate which camera is using which mic along the bottom of the screen. After this, I'll talk briefly about the tripods that I used. The first camera we're going to start with is the Panasonic HC-V770K, and the retail price on this is about $450. This is a 1080p camera, and it outputs 1080 over the HDMI cable. Offers you the microphone input like we're currently using with the Deity VideoMic D3. I believe that the image quality for this camcorder is fine. It's not remarkable, like we're about to see in some of the other cameras we're about to test. What I do really like about this camcorder, like I mentioned before, is it's really easy to use. It's pretty easy to set up. You can flip the camera towards you when you are presenting, so you kind of have a little bit of a confidence monitor that you can look at. It does a really good job of tracking faces and keeping autofocus exactly the way that it's supposed to be, which is also really nice. So other than that, it's not a terribly remarkable camera in any way or another, except for, again, like I mentioned, it's pretty easy to use. It has a nice zoom range. I believe it's like up to 20x of optical zoom. So you can actually zoom in quite a bit from a distance away. So it does offer you a little bit more flexibility as far as the zoom range you are capable of viewing, from something really wide to something much tighter in, close in. So again, this is the Panasonic V770K, and it's a 1080 camera. So we're going to jump on to the next camera and let you see what that looks like. So next up we have the Panasonic Lumix G7. This is a mirrorless camera that offers 4K video recording, still photos, that clean HDMI output so we can capture it for live streaming or video recording externally. So here you can see the image quality directly compared to the camcorder we just looked at. Both of these are Panasonic cameras, but one's a camcorder, the other a mirrorless camera. So this is the mirrorless image. Now this particular kit, the Lumix G7, came with two lenses, the one that we're looking at right now, and then also a zoom lens that you can interchange. And the two lenses plus the camera body together came in at $498, so just under $500 for a camera body with two kit lenses. I'm also using the Rode VideoMicro shotgun microphone on this camera. So as you can see, and I'm looking at my confidence monitor here, again that image quality is a little nicer, it's a little sharper, it's cleaner than the camcorder we just tested. Now, a drawback for this particular camera, this G7, is that the autofocus doesn't work really well when you're not recording. So if you are not recording to the SD card, if you just have the HDMI cable plugged in, it's not triggering the autofocus. Now you can do this manually by having somebody tap on the screen. You know, if they're operating the camera, they can tap on you wherever you are, and it will autofocus right then, but it will lose that focus if you move out of frame. Another option, and what I did here, is I just set my focus manually before I came and sat down. I'm not planning on moving around a lot, so the focus is going to stay pretty much the same, and that's what I'm counting on. So again, it might not be as user-friendly, as easy to use. It's not terribly uneasy to use, but is probably going to look best if either you can set the focus manually before you begin, or if you have somebody operating it that they can tap on the touch screen and set that focus for you as you move around. So again, this is the Lumix G7. As an example of what you can do with these mirrorless cameras, I swapped out the lens on this Panasonic G7 for this 25mm f1.7 lens. So you can see that the background behind me is much more blurred, which is making the image of me. It separates the background and foreground, making for a more interesting image. Now again, I had to set the manual focus on this before I began, and because the depth of field is so much more shallow, as soon as I move backwards, I'm out of focus, or if I get too close, I get out of focus as well. So again, it's going to require a bit more control by the operator just to make sure that they stay focused on it. But if you're doing a YouTube style video like this one is, this could be really great, where you set that focus ahead of time, you plan on staying generally in the same position. You can kind of go left and right and it stays okay. But you can do your live streams from here, or just pre-record directly to the camera and upload that for whatever your needs might be, video announcements, church announcements, whatever it is. So same camera, the G7, but with the 25mm f1.7 lens, and that lens is only $150. It's a great value to add such image quality to a camera like this. Next up, we have the Panasonic HC-VX981K 4K camcorder. This camera shoots in 4K, but the HDMI output resolution is still 1080p. It does give you the option to do a 2160 over HDMI, but my particular HDMI encoder wouldn't take that resolution, and so it is still at 1080, which is what most streams would be anyways. So this particular camera comes in at about $650. And again, like the previous camcorder, comes with all the cables you need, including the HDMI cable, power cable for constant power, and even the rechargeable battery if you wanted to do something mobile. Very similar to the previous camcorder, it does a great job of tracking faces and keeping focus, and has an excellent zoom range built into the camera. But also like the previous camcorder, the image quality, that depth of field is very wide, so the things behind me are almost in as much focus as I am, just looking at myself on my confidence monitors here. So that being said, again, you've got this ease of use versus image quality. I don't think that this looks bad, but it's not going to be quite as sharp as the mirrorless cameras. Again, the flip side to all of that is this is pretty much a complete package just in one box. There's no changing out lenses. You don't have to do anything extra to figure out how you're going to power it. It all just kind of comes built in. The microphone I'm using for this particular camera setup is the Rode VideoMic GO. And so you can hear what that sounds like as well. The gain on this particular camcorder is set to automatic, so we'll see what that sounds like. But yeah, this is a Panasonic 4K camcorder, and I'm using the HDMI output, which is kind of maxed at 1080 for my particular setup, and here's what it looks like. We are now looking at the Panasonic Lumix G85. It's kind of the upgrade from the G7 we looked at previously. So the Lumix G85 comes in at about $700 with a single kit lens that we're going to be looking at in just a moment. Again, this is the Panasonic Lumix G85. It's about $700, and again, you can add on that 25mm f1.7 for about $150. And I'm using the Deity VideoMic D3 on this camera. So you can see what the image quality looks like, and one big advantage that this G85 has over the G7 is that you are able to stream from that HDMI cable while you are recording to an SD card. And because it's recording to an SD card, it's actively filming, the autofocus is engaged. So I can see from the viewfinder on the camera that flips towards me, which is a nice feature, that it's tracking my face. It's got a box around me, and it can follow and go wherever I go. So if I go forward or backward, it keeps focus on me the entire time, and it's doing a pretty good job of it. So again, yeah, this is the G5. It looks like maybe it lost me. There it goes. So the Lumix G85 again comes in at about $700. You can add on the extra lens for $150. I'm going to go ahead and throw that on there and see what the autofocus is like for that particular lens, because that depth of field is so much more shallow. Alright, so here's the Lumix G85 with the 25mm f1.7 lens, and I'm going to do some moving around a little bit to make sure and see how the focus tracking works with this lens that has that shallower depth of field, how long it takes to track it and keep me in focus when I move around. So again, this is the 25. This is, I'm about, I don't know, 3-4 feet maybe away from the camera while I'm sitting behind my desk. So this might be a great setup for doing those YouTube style videos where it's a bit more intimate for the camera, where you've got one person and the camera. Maybe not necessarily as good of a setup when you're trying to do an entire church service, unless of course this camera was much closer to you. Again, still using the Deity VideoMic D3 attached to this Lumix G85. The last camera we're going to take a look at for this particular video is the Sony a6100, and it comes with this 16 to 50 kit lens. The cost for this camera is about $700. It can shoot 4K video, it can shoot still photos, offers that clean HDMI output, and of course the microphone input for audio, either from an external microphone or from your soundboard. I'll talk about that later. So this is what the image quality looks like. I like the image quality that the Sony offers. The autofocus works whether you're recording or not recording, so kind of similar to a camcorder in that regard, or the G85 when it is recording. So you don't have to be filling up a memory card if all you're doing is live streaming. It picks up the focus automatically. As I move around, it tracks me, and you don't have to worry about it, which is really nice. Apart from that, it offers that microphone input. We're using the Rode VideoMic GO, so that one doesn't require a battery, and you can see or hear what the sound is like when using that microphone. The one drawback that I'd have with the Sony is the screen, the kind of like the viewfinder screen on the back. It only flips up and directly on the back. It doesn't flip out and around. And so if you're using something like an external microphone, it's basically impossible to use because it just blocks the screen. So there are some extra devices you can use to like move that shoe mount over so that it doesn't block the screen. But it's a little bit of a bummer. I would have liked to have seen like the Panasonics have, where the screen can rotate and flip all the way out and off to the side. Is a bit nicer for videoing, especially if you're just doing it by yourself. So similar to the other mirrorless cameras, you can buy some extra lenses, some interchangeable lenses to get better background blur than maybe you would have with the kit lens. This is an APS-C size sensor, which is a little bit larger than the Micro Four Thirds of the Panasonic cameras. So these Sony lenses are a little bit more expensive than the Micro Four Thirds lenses as well. So keep that in mind if this is a route that you go, is that the body starts off a little bit more expensive, and then the lenses are probably going to be a bit more expensive in an equivalent focal range. Now, the sensor is bigger, so the image quality should be a little bit better as well, but these are the trade-offs that you'll have. So again, this is the Sony a6100. This particular kit comes in at about $700. Now that you've seen each of the cameras, let's talk about audio. While any of these mics that we used are a major improvement to the mic that is built into the cameras, for me, I think the Deity VideoMic D3 sounds the best. Now, it's the only one in the mix that requires a battery, so if that's a deal breaker for you, then probably the Rode VideoMicro is the next best choice. For any of these, placement is key. The closer you can get the mic to the subject, the better your sound is going to be. So get a longer cable, put it on a boom, and hold it as close as you can to the person presenting while staying out of the frame. All of these cameras are also capable of inputting the sound from a church soundboard that has an auxiliary output, and you can plug that right into the camera. When you do that, then you can use your existing wireless mics, a pulpit microphone, maybe a lapel mic or an ear-worn mic. Also, depending on the video capture or streaming hardware that you choose, many of those devices also have a sound input port, allowing you to take your soundboard audio and send it straight to the live stream. Now, regarding the tripods, the two I picked up for these tests to keep it under budget were cheap, and they felt really cheap. The Magnus VT300 at $80 and the Magnus VT4000 at $130. The 4000 is heavier, but it is not more smooth in panning or tilting, so if you have to go cheap, just go the cheapest with the VT300. It's stable enough, especially as a starter video tripod, and then when you're ready to upgrade, look at options from Manfrotto or some other more reputable brands. So, when it comes to cameras, it's ease of use versus better quality. Which one will you choose?